And something that you had mentioned, you allowed through your leadership, your wife was allowed to be feminine. So the society's definition of femininity or feminism is completely different than what the word says. Can you kind of go into that a little bit more of like how your leadership allowed her to do that and like what that entails?
Right. So I don't want to do what Christian evangelicalism fails at all the time and never calls out the sins of women. I don't intend to do that. But with the work that I do, we focus exclusively on the man. Not to say it's all your fault, but to say, hey, bro, we can't do anything about that. So let's build influence. Let's build leadership capital. Let's transform into the greatest man she's ever known. Well, she should do X, Y, Z. Yes, she should, and she'll answer to God for it. Now, anyway, back to what we can control. Well, yeah, but I know, and I'm with you, and I would rebuke her if I was her pastor, but I'm not. So anyway, back to what we can
Yeah.
control. So yeah, and I know you already know that, Brandon, but just for
Yeah.
everybody listening. So I lost the question in my rant. Give it to me again.
Sure, sure. So I was just saying,
Femininity.
yes,
Yeah, femininity.
Okay,
yes.
there we go. Femininity. Sorry. So I think of femininity as softness, a vulnerability, a joyful and willful submission, where she actually rests and responds. She fulfills her role as a wife to her husband, a helper. He's called to this mission. She's called to this mission alongside him. But again, we'll just quote the Bible here. He was not made for her. She was made for him. A husband is the head of his wife. Christ is the head of a husband. So
Mhm.
a lot of women don't get to enjoy that because we've sold them the burden of responsibility. Hey, baby, with you and me, it's 50-50. Ah, what a clever play there, John Michael. I see what you did. You wanted to get out of responsibility, so you put it on Natalie's back, but you did it while bragging about her. Natalie, you're so great. You're so amazing. You're so awesome. Let me put half of all of our burdens on you instead of recognizing the obvious truths that I was built for more. My shoulders are supposed to be able to carry more. The physical creation images the spiritual. It's not an accident. It's not a separate, disconnected thing. The physical
Mhm.
is intended and deliberately built by God to image the spiritual. So my wife is incredible. Like you can say all the things. Natalie checks all those boxes. She's wise. She's smart. She's godly. She's beautiful. She's wonderful. That's an incredible woman. I would think you would want her in your corner. Oh, heck yeah, I do. She's my most trusted advisor. I love her more than anybody. I like her more than anybody. I trust her more than anybody. I respect her more than anybody. She's my favorite of all the people. And yet she's not my leader and she's not my husband. So the feminine is is unknown to a lot of women because on top of the burdens of culture that's told her to be tough and be strong and be hard and stand up and whatever other nonsense. Um, at the same time, the church has padded that with 50-50, be great partners. And then at the same time, I've made the mistake of masculinizing my wife. I've tried to drive her away from her feelings and drive her into logical thinking. Babe, just be clear. What do you want? And I have tried to treat her like a roommate. I have worked to make her more masculine. I've deliberately worked for years to masculinize her, to get her to kill and crush the flower of the feminine spirit and go, hey, be a lighthouse. That's your job, bro. And you didn't want to marry a dude. That's why you married this beautiful woman. Well, she's just changed over the years. Right, John Michael. But you've had a heavy influence on that. So I know I started to answer it, and then I started jumping into some
It's
examples. But
perfect.
the feminine
This
in
is good
God's
stuff.
good design, she is a flower. But she's not delicate in the sense that she can be easily broken, but she is tender in the sense that she is to be protected. So Natalie is capable. Natalie is wise. Not Natalie is godly, and this is true for any godly wife. And at the same time, that doesn't mean she's a husband. It doesn't mean we're swappable humans. Yeah, we're just people raising kids. No, we're a husband and wife raising kids, and I want my wife to enjoy feminine softness. I want her to enjoy the feminine act of surrender, again, which connects to the physical, the sex act. This woman literally lays on her back, opens her knees and her soft body to the hard masculine. These things are not accidental, and they're not like, that's funny. It's not it at all. That's all designed by the Lord to show what else is supposed to be happening in a marriage.
It's really good, man.
Love it.
Thanks for sharing those points. It's really, it's obviously well said, but it also really connects the dots, I think, probably for a lot of people. I've never heard it
Yeah.
so quickly, from you kind of capture the whole block, very quickly. It was a really good segment right there. And I think that I agree wholeheartedly in kind of the differences in that men and women are different, and you can't just swap places. And I would argue so far to say that the bulk of our problems as a society are based off the fact that, for 40 years now, American culture has tried to swap men and women intermittently. And here you go. Now we've got today. So thanks for that
Yeah.
segment
Michael
there.
Foster and Non-Tenant, they are the guys over at It's Good to Be a Man. They say it so well. As a man goes, so goes the household. As the household goes, so goes the church. As the church goes, so goes society. And then I add the tag on the end, which brings us to our present insanity in the West.
Mm.
And, but again, whenever Natalie's half responsible for everything, I always get to go, well, hey, she had her part to play. It's beautiful. It's very clever for the John Michael wanting to get out of responsibility. It's very Garden of Eden-esque. Hey, it's this woman.
Yeah, this woman you
Yeah,
gave me.
you gave me.
She gave me the fruit. Yeah.
You should apologize to me.
Yeah.
I love it.
And that's a really good point too, because like with Shackleton, right? There were numerous times where he had members of his crew kind of do the wrong thing, right? And he could have been like, oh, well, because so and so messed up, we're all in this situation. He didn't do that. He owned it, right? And he's in charge. You don't gripe down, you only gripe up, right? So, he kept moving things forward. And so you have a very real world example of kind of how that plays out of not abdicating your responsibility and owning it. I had a leader early in my military career say that that's called Mickey Mouse leadership, when you say, oh, well, battalion gave us this order, so that's why we got to do it. It's like, no, don't pass the buck. You own it. We're doing this because of this, right? And don't blame someone else for that or whatever.
It's good.
Anyway, Brandon, you were going, sorry.
Oh, no. So that's kind of exactly what I was wanting him to discuss. Let's dive a little bit more into like your family captain program. Let's talk about like we know some of the results, like the feminine soft wife. What are some of the other results? Like you talked about, you mentioned sex, because sex is such a demonized thing in a lot of churches and a lot of society as far as man and wife. So maybe dive into that a little bit and talk about that with your program.
Yeah, man. So we start from the perspective that God loves sex and the devil hates sex. And what we mean by that is God designed sex. It was all his idea. If we look at sex in accordance with God's original design, it was for a husband and wife. He calls it good. And he invented every part of it. He invented, I don't know how wide our audience is here, but he invented all the grown-up parts. He invented everything that they do. He invented the pleasure. He invented the erection. All this, his design. Satan didn't sneak in and make some distortions here. Satan didn't come up with orgasms. All this is God's intention. Is it uncomfortable? Maybe, because it's unfamiliar, but Christians should reclaim what belongs to our God. This is our jurisdiction because it's his jurisdiction. I can't help that the world and that Satan is a pervert and he perverts everything. He hates sex. So how can you prove that? Well, because he wants to distort God's good design. He wants everyone having sex except for a husband and wife. He wants every other possible combination happening except for those who have exchanged vows. And then he wants perversions and distortions. This is why he tries to, abuse us sexually as children through means and all kinds of possibilities. This is the pervasiveness of pornography. That's not a love of sex. That's a hatred of God's good design and a perversion of it. So we stand up, first of all, as the church and say, this belongs to our God. Christians should have the best marriages. Christians should have the best sex lives. Christians should have the best everything. Why? Well, because we have God. He's the king, and we're living in accordance to his ways. Why wouldn't we? Obviously. He's given us his own son. How will he not also give us all things freely? So clearly, these are just good gifts to enjoy. This is his goodness. This is his mercy. This is his kindness being poured out to us in yet another way where his opulence is made known to us. But yeah, the world they're busy making sex robots and that are more lifelike. And meanwhile, the church is like ashamed because our coffee maker in the fellowship hall says bun on it. And the only way I know to break past this stuff is to talk about it. Church
Absolutely.
ladies will be offended. My mission is not to offend them, but my mission is to still be a truth teller, no matter what the cost. So,
I mean,
yeah,
there's an entire book of the Bible about it.
bro. Man, I've been rereading Song of Solomon. I hadn't read it in a long time. Been rereading it the past 2 weeks. I'm just like, this is graphic.
Yeah, I mean,
Like, I'm uncomfortable here, Lord. Not really, but yeah. So there's such a disconnect there, and I pretend there's not when I speak, and it can be pretty polarizing, and I know that. And at the same time, I'm not sorry for it, because we help a lot of guys, and we help a lot of marriages to enjoy God's good gift. Sex is not a gift that wives give to husbands. Sex is not a gift that husbands give to wives. Sex is a gift that God has given to marriage. So we reframe all of this with the truth that sex is not just a physical thing. Sex is a spiritual thing, and sex is an emotional thing. It is an important nutrient that God has given to marriages for bonding, for obviously bringing children into the earth primarily, but for the pleasures that the Lord has connected to it, for comfort we see in Scripture as well. So we're continuing to encourage people in it to talk boldly. There's things that are private that need to stay private, obviously between a husband and wife, but the subject of sex can be talked about very plainly, very boldly. It's like, no one will ever hear me discuss anything about me and Natalie privately, but in general, the concept and the teachings revolve around sex. Yeah, we can be bold and very enthusiastic in our teachings on it.
Right.
I love the word nutrient, because it's such a binding thing in marriage, and it's such a necessary part. And there are men and women who just, I hear guys say, I get it maybe once a month or twice a year, and it's like, man, that's not a marriage. Like, that's a very unhealthy situation right there. And there's a lot of things going wrong there that you got to start reviewing. So yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to touch on that. But